Welcome back to this week's Parent Parsha series, Parashat Bamidbar and Chodesh Tov. I wanted to share a very short idea with you. I was listening to an NPR podcast this week about the K is for Kindness National Survey study. And what they were discussing in the study was the fact that many of us, most parents, actually rank kindness as a characteristic and a trait that we want our children to exemplify and to practice above all else. And when parents are asked to rank kindness in terms of values and importance, they rank it as number one, that they want their children to be kind above all else. What's fascinating is that when you took those same parents and you took their children and you asked them, what do you think is the most important value that your parents have or that you think you're supposed to have? Sadly, kindness was not ranked as number one. It more often was academic success. And it was mind-blowing to parents. Parents were shocked and they were dismayed because most parents actually really wanted their children to recognize that kindness was something that was the number one. And what this study went on to talk about is the fact that we want kindness to be something that is paramount to our children. However, if we don't talk about it on a regular basis, it's actually not going to be something that they naturally do. That at the same time that children naturally do have some ingrained sense of empathy, they also have some sides of them that are not so empathic. And that oftentimes as parents, we do a lot of things that don't necessarily breed empathy, although we think they breed empathy. And so it really got me thinking about the ways in which we talk about kindness, not just the ways in which we are kind, because I think that that is as always, so important, the way we role model kindness, but also the ways that we talk about being kind, that we talk about empathy. So the thing that I loved two really special things that I have kind of thought about and kind of really asked myself, am I doing this enough? Are we doing this enough in our home? When one kid hurts another kid's feelings, right? So often than not, sometimes as parents, we say, you need to apologize, right? What you did was wrong. You need to apologize. And the other kid goes, yeah, I'm sorry, right? Or they actually feel bad and they say it genuine, okay, fine, I'm sorry. But in reality, that actual articulation, while important, and I'm not minimizing it, is actually not building empathy. Instead, if we can pause actually and say to that child, I want you to look for a second. I want you to look at your sibling. Does it look like he's happy or does he look like he's sad? And the child more often might be like, oh, it looks like he's sad because he's crying. Oh, we don't want to make people sad. What do you think you did that made him sad? And he might say, oh, I took this away. And I said, okay. I don't think you want to make people sad. We don't want to be doing things that make people sad. And we might even pipe in with, and you're such a kind child, because we're reminding them that that's something that they have inside of them. And I know that you really want to do a kind thing right now. Let's see if there's a way for us to fix it. Now, it might be that part of that fixing it is that the child says, I'm sorry, but it also might be that the child goes over and says, I'm sorry, you're sad. What can I do to make it better? And I think that like something small like that is actually a really important component to building a sense of empathy, to building a sense of recognition about the other, that there's somebody else. And in that way, we're not just fostering kindness, we're creating kindness, we're developing kindness, we're choosing kindness. When it comes to our older kids, right, when they come home from a situation that they're describing to you about like an interaction that happened in school, even just taking a pause and asking like, oh, like, did that hurt the other person's feelings? Or like, what did you think about it? If you were in that situation, do you think it would have hurt your feelings? Or the teacher seemed really upset and I couldn't figure out why. Oh, like, oh, I wonder what happened. Like, do you think that maybe she was feeling something? It's not just about being kind, it's developing a certain amount of empathy. And of course, if you're wondering if I actually practice the study in my own home, you can bet I did. Because for people who know me, I kind of have a little mantra that I give my kids each morning. I tell them, you know, learn well, not learn best, but learn well, do the best that you can, be kind, have fun, right? Like kind of like take in the day. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, we're talking about kindness. And so I looked at my oldest daughter and I said to her, I want you to tell me what I'm like curious, like, be honest. Like, what do you think is our most important value? And I actually just gave her two options: kindness or academics. And she's like, I know the right answer is kindness. She's like, and in truth, I know that that's your most important thing. But sometimes it's hard to know because I wonder if it's also how well we do in school. And it kind of got me thinking. And I said to her, is that because I oftentimes will ask you, how did it go in school today? Do you have homework? How did that test go? But am I asking enough? Were you kind today? And so she kind of looked at me, she rolled her eyes. She's like, oh God, I know you're going to start asking us every day. What kind thing did you do today? And it also was a check for me to remind myself, like, am I telling them to like be kind and thoughtful? Is that the first thing out of the gate? And we did the same study with my next kid, who actually said, no, I actually think it's kindness, which was like a little bit of a relief. But she was able to acknowledge that like there's a little bit of this notion of like, we talk about ways that we build empathy, we talk about ways to do kindness and chesed to other people, but like, are we really digging in around the fact of, are we being kind to other people? How are we kind to other people? What is our empathy? And are we building it in our homes, in our rhetoric, in our day to day, the ability to be thankful, the ability to look at a situation and find the good and the kindness in the world? And so I challenge us to not only be people who role model kindness, but to remember that kindness and building kindness is intentional parenting. And it's something that, as much as we can possibly do, because it is hard to be intentional parents all the time, that we should try to do this. The short Parsha idea, I would say, is that with intentionality and with chesed and with kindness, Hashem counts us in this week's Parsha, right? And so the notion that each one of us is chaviv, each one of us is important to Hashem, and that's how we start the story of Bamidbar. And it goes a little bit south in Orion. We come back to this notion at the end of, again, the notion of counting. But I think that like the really thinking about the ways in which every person matters, every person counts. Kindness and creating a culture of kindness can't just be done by one person. It has to be done by all of us together. So Bamidbar, Bamidbar is its English name in the English translation is numbers. So I think you could do lots of different things with numbers, cookies of numbers, anything you can come up with it have to do with numbers. We're doing snickerdoodles because it looks like sand. It looks like the Midbar. It looks like the desert. I also did cactuses. These are not my cactuses, but they're somebody's cactuses. I think you can also do flags for all the Nisi'im and all the Tigalim. And of course, anything related to, as we're steadily and rapidly approaching Shavuot, I definitely think this is a moment to jump over and start celebrating Shavuot in any way that you can. So wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom, a Chodesh Tov. It should be the upcoming days should be Shalom in Eretz Yisrael, and everybody should be safe and healthy, and that we enter into Shavuot and Matan Torah with safe and simcha, and able to celebrate together b'shalom and b'shalva.